Welcome to WorldBizwatch here in Hong Kong. I'm Farlan Chang. This is a special program that celebrates extraordinary people making a profound impact on other people's lives and changing our world for the better. Get ready to meet one American hero and his epic journey from prisoner of war out here in the East in nearby Vietnam to inspirational figure back west in America and beyond. It's a story that shows the power of the human spirit to prevail against all odds. Dave Carey has a lot on which to reflect. He survived an epic odyssey from POW in Vietnam to American hero, and his life story has made him one of America's most popular motivational speakers. Captain Dave Carey was a young naval aviator in Vietnam. As he looks out at the beauty of the sea today, he can recall that day more than 40 years ago over the Gulf of Tonkin, when a surface-to-air missile altered the course of his mission that morning and altered the mission of his life.
This thing is coming through the sky like a ton of lead, and I'll tell you, every time the nose of that airplane would go by the water, and for me, that water meant safety. It seemed like it would hesitate. And I would think to myself, this thing is going to fly. And I'd start starting on that stick and kicking the pedals, the nose would whip off, going through 4,000 feet. I got a glimpse of my altimeter, ejected from the airplane, had a parachute, landed in the middle of a small North Vietnamese village. Now, when I landed, there was nobody around. They were wherever they went for air raids, so I get rid of my helmet and my parachute, and I ducked out between the hooches, and I started running out across the rice paddy. And as I'm going out through the rice paddy, I can look up, and I can see those airplanes flying away. So I'm kind of half watching those airplanes, and I'm trying to get through this rice paddy, and I get to about the middle of the rice paddy, and I can see that one of those airplanes is turning around, and he was going to come back. So I stopped right there. I started digging around in my gear, and I dug out a little radio that we carried. And when I paused to inhale, I let off one of those little buttons on that radio, which allowed Dean then to get a word in edgewise. And he said, "You know we cannot come and get you." At which point I couldn't think of anything clever to say anymore. And Dean said, "I'll see you when this is over." And he flew away. And I stood out there in the middle of that rice paddy. I don't know how to describe it to you. It was like I was the only person in the entire universe. It was just me out there all alone by myself with... And probably I don't have to describe that to you too much, because I think I'd be willing to bet money that we've all had times in our lives when we get that alone feeling.
Dave Carey has had that feeling more than most. He spent more than 5.5 years in the notorious Hanoi Hilton in North Vietnam.
It was lots and lots and lots of time, interspersed with moments of pure terror. We were interrogated occasionally, beaten occasionally, tortured on very rare occasion.
All of it was done with the attendant shouting and hollering and punching and jabbing and kicking, and until they'd have me just crunched up into a ball on the floor, feeling like all my joints were coming apart. I begged them to kill me. They wouldn't kill me. They just hurt me. And I knew I was going to go crazy. The pain was just incredible.
That pain gave Dave a perspective on pleasure that many of us will never know. How he survived his captor's brutality is a lesson in the power of the human spirit to triumph over adversity. It's a timeless lesson Dave has been teaching for more than 3 decades as one of the nation's most sought-after public speakers, to top brands from Apple to IBM and Starbucks to Burger King. Dave is an accomplished author. His book, The Ways We Choose, offers lessons of life from a POW's experience. The title is really the central theme of Dave's message, that we can choose to change our lives for the better, especially when times are tough. We joined Dave as he spoke to a men's group at Mariners Church in Irvine, California, and a convention of roofers in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we found his audiences magnetized. Dave is a master storyteller, and his humor and pacing hold his audience like only a great communicator can. Beautiful. Dave is a man of faith and is not afraid to talk about that before any audience if asked, but he never gets preachy. He's so real because the stitches in the fabric of his life are so real, just like every person who listens.
Well, look, here's the way it works. Everybody's going to get shot down. In this life, we're all going to get shot down, and some of us more than once. And so then the question becomes, how do you deal with that when it happens to you?
From his concrete examples, Dave gives his audiences timeless lessons he learned the hard way from 5.5 years in the Hanoi Hilton. Listen to this story.
Our coping mechanism largely was laughter. We had a fellow who went to interrogation. The interrogator wanted to know, in your country, where does your family live? He told him, Kansas. He said, what do your family do? He said, they're farmers. He said, what do your family grow? He said, they grow updog. Later on, the interrogator took him back to his cell, and he came over to our cell. And the little spy door opens up, and there stands the elf. We have names for these people. And the elf wants to know, what's updog? What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? He keeps saying it over and over again. What's up, Doc? We are thinking the elf has blown a fuse. It doesn't make a lick of sense. But he wants to know what's up, Doc. And then he starts to get excited. And the next thing you know, his head's jammed in that little hole in the wall. He's got veins standing out. He's spitting out. See, now I'll bet you could identify a lot more closely with interrogators, bosses, spouses. It's not good for them to get excited. He demands to know what's up, Doc. We're saying, give us a hint, give us a hint. Finally he says, up, Doc, you know, goes on a farm in Kansas. We said, oh, up, Doc. It's about this high. We taught him everything there is to know about up, Doc. How to make up, Doc bread, whatever he wanted to know, we were teaching. How do we do it? We did what we had to do. We did our best. We chose to grow through that experience. We kept our sense of humor, and we kept the faith. Faith in ourselves.
Dave's mantra is powerful, useful, it's transferable, and attainable. That's why so many groups hire Dave Carey, from top brands seeking management lessons in leadership to parents raising their children.
Everybody has some sort of set of problems, and so when I start talking about how do you deal with these kinds of things, and I start going through my 5 points of here's what you do, really, truly, you do what you have to do, you do your best, you keep your sense of humor, you grow through it, and you keep the faith. And that seems to have a universal applicability. At least my audiences tell me that it is. I
loved it. I am so glad I came. His story is compelling, and he draws you into the story. You can see the scenery. You can participate in the conversations that he had. You are right there, and yet he keeps drawing it back to the lessons learned and the importance of the choices that we all have to make every day about how we're going to live through adversity or good times.
I thought that it was incredible. I thought his experience was profound, and that he had such a trial and that he made such a positive thing out of it. I loved what he said about his faith in God and his teammates, and just how he used it as a positive experience to grow instead of just sit in the cell and not be able to survive.
Much of Dave's power comes from his pain. While in prison, he was beaten and tortured by interrogators so severely, he reached a point where he could no longer think.
Pain was absolutely incredible, but worse than the pain was in my mind. It's the only time that I've ever been like this in my life where I could not pick a subject and think about it. It was as though I didn't have any control anymore. My mind just ricocheted around inside of my head. Think about crazy stuff like my home in Jeanette, or the first car I bought, or the dog I had when I was a kid, just out of control things flashing around in my mind. And what I wanted to think about was all the lies I had told, because I knew they'd be back. I couldn't get a grip on my mind. Into my head came the first line of the 23rd Psalm. And that line kept coming into my head, and I didn't want to think about it either, by the way. I wanted to think about the lies I had told, but I figured out by hit or miss that if I would think about that line, the Lord is my shepherd, I could think about that line. Well, my mama didn't raise any dummies. I started thinking about that line. Now, I had learned the 23rd Psalm when I was a little bitty guy in Sunday school. And over the years, I had been adrift. I had been so far. See, I'm ashamed to stand here this morning and tell you that at that point in my life, it had been years and years and years and years since I thought of the 23rd Psalm. But that line was there, and I could think about that line. And I worked on it for days and days until from somewhere back here in my head, I dredged up the whole 23rd Psalm. And I discovered once I had done that, I had control of my mind back. Now, I most certainly do not think that that was any accident. There was God's faithfulness through my mother and father's witness
planted that word in my head so that when I would be desperate, it would be there.
Dave Carey needed the 23rd Psalm long after he came home from Vietnam, when he and his 2 college-age children watched as Dave's wife battled breast cancer, the same woman who had waited 5.5 years for Dave while he languished in prison.
The gal who waited for me, and we were married 6 weeks after I was back, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1992, and we went through one of the most emotional, incredible things I've ever been through in my life, up and down, roller coaster, and she passed away in 1996. When we went through that, I mean, it was horrendous, and I couldn't see any reason for that, or I couldn't understand why she, why us. Now, I move away from it some years, and I look back on that, and I see the impact that she had with her life on the people around her, and the people that heard the Word of God through that. It's all perfectly clear to me now. I don't like it anymore. I mean, I'm not pleased with it, but quite frankly, this world is not about me. It's not, life is not about me. I'm just a wisp of smoke here passing through, and there's a whole lot more going on than just me. And so, for many years now, I've just been, I long ago decided, well, what I need to do is try to figure out what God wants me to do and get on board, and so I do that.
Dave remarried to a wonderful woman. They have 4 grown children between them, and he chooses to make his a wonderful life. Dave Carey's story has made so many others think about what really matters.
It is like the little thing that your mama used to tell you when she bounced you on your knee, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. So I believe that.
Dave likes to remind us that the ways we choose will determine whether we are living in the best of times or the worst of times. Which are you choosing?
Which it is entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you. And all my experience teaches me that we've been given the ability to make those choices. So, as you wrap up here at the end of this convention this week, as you go back into the trenches, as you go back to the business, as you go back into this economy, I would urge you to always choose to make it the best of all times. The best of all times. Thank you very much. God bless.
No, Dave, thank you for your grace under fire and teaching us how we too can prevail against all odds. For World BizWatch, I'm Farland Chang.